I guess this is it. Welcome back, everyone. Today we're going to be doing one of these live streams again. We're going to be reviewing 6 awesome awards websites, and I'm super duper happy because this is the second day we're going to get to do this, and it's totally incredible. We go through super duper cool sites and review them and talk about the common patterns, talk about what you can learn from them, and most importantly, we have you guys, the most wonderful community. So just like this video and we can get started. All right. So with that said, let's just get started with the first one. This is the first site that we're going to be talking about for today, Halo Dental or Halo Dental. I'm hoping this is Halo Dental. It might be a little bit better if it is Halo Dental. Let's just get started. This is the website of Halo Dental, and as soon as you enter, firstly, I did not expect in 1,000 years to have a dental website which was super duper advanced and all designy, but now I do see that this looks nothing like a tooth. Maybe this is some sort of a weird device. Whatever it is, I do have higher hopes now. So with that said, this is the site of Halo Dental, and it automatically starts you off with this really nice cursor hijack, which is the most basic thing you can do in any modern site. You have a constant video playing in the background. As long as the video is minimized in its terms of its file size, I think it's an okay thing to do. When you have long videos that are sort of never ending and with a lot of sound in it, then it truly becomes problematic, but I don't think that's the case over here. You obviously have your very classic title bar with your name and your buttons and all of the main header items. So this is really classic in those terms, nothing too complicated about that. And then you also have the giant Halo name, which animated in front of us as soon as we got on this screen. And then you also have this description. You can allow or decline cookies, but for this case I want to see the entire functionality of the website, so declining cookies only risks that experience. Let's just get started. Alright, with as soon as we've gotten started, and I'm just getting into the zone here, we see we've quickly changed the screen's background color from black to white, and this is a common formula to keep things not boring. So when you have things that they get boring on a specific screen, it makes sense to change the background color, have things move around a little bit, change the layout, which is also done over here. So you started off with a very classic center aligned theme, and then as soon as you switched out on the section, you went on a 50-50 left right align kind of situation, which is great because now you have a lot of difference to work with. Now you have a stark contrast, and it obviously keeps things interesting, which is obviously something that we do want. You can also take a look at the detailed solution. I love the fact that they've used icons. Can we just say that for the beginning, just as we're getting started, because it is so easy to get a huge chunk of text that you're supposed to put into a website and then forget all about the icons and images, especially for the little text, and then it is automatically a nightmare for the user. So the fact that they've taken out the time to have a little bit on the icons front is good. I might have wanted to see a little bit more spacing over here, but you know what, at the end of the day, what's fine is fine. It's not too wrong by any definition, and I believe we can just let this one go. With that said, the slider is also kind of pretty because you have the ability to change all of the images. I believe it changes on its own, or maybe it doesn't because it's not doing that anymore, but overall it's a good slider. It's a very simple layout. Maybe I would have wanted to see this distributed a little bit more evenly over the page, because when you have all of these things crammed in one corner, it's kind of difficult to look at. But other than that, I don't see many things that are technically wrong over here, and it's a smooth transition as soon as you get started. So I don't think this is the most finicky site at all. Then you have educate and document with the Halo app. So this has to do something with the dental stuff, but it's not the most basic dental clinic site, which is what I would never have expected to see like a fancy award sites on. So I feel like this is something we can really allow, and it still does fall in that pattern. This is a kind of specific app. Meet the Halo app, designed for patient care. Included app allows instant streaming when connected to Halo digital mirror. I feel like this is a good app on its own, and the fact that they've made this site also speaks volumes to how they're very aligned with the goals of software design. But with that said, this text paragraph right off the bat is quite difficult to understand, and I'm just going to say it bluntly on the face. This is quite difficult to understand. I have no idea what this is, and I've just started reading the first 2 lines in my head. Like, this is just next level, kind of difficult to understand. And for a brand that sort of breaks things down in the first section that gives you a little bit of an easier time when you're just getting started. I feel like this is really where they quickly dropped the ball. I get that it's a lot of effort, but making sites is a lot of effort, my guy. So this is the end of the day a not too good situation for me, because you can't really read or understand much of the stuff that goes on here unless you truly pause and take the time out. So at this point, I might suggest simplifying the typography a little bit, simplifying the actual contents that go on into this site, and simplifying the overall user experience. With that said, I do see the fact that they're maintaining white space, which is great. You have a little bit of white space at the top, you have a little bit of white space over here at the bottom, and it overall for good makes a good experience. And then you have your classic bento grid, not a lot of spacing in the middle, but it's a classic bento grid, and it lets you see a lot of stuff at once. So I'm overall a fan of bento grids. I am a little bit concerned, and I'm not being too nitpicky over here. I get that spacing is a really minor issue, but there is not a lot of spacing at the top and bottom, which is really starting to freak me out right about now. So that's just my dissatisfaction with the way this bento is done. By the way, you guys, we're rating these sites out of 10, so let me know what you think in the live chat. With that said, there is an image. This image is actually quite interactive. You can hover over it and it changes the direction of focus as well. You have this huge font and you have a little bit of a description. You also have the text, you have the button, you have everything you need for everything. But my primary concern remains, this font is so boring, because you could have had any nice font you wanted over here, any artisanal font, any font that you wouldn't normally use for the description. You could have had any of those fonts over here, and yet we're stuck with this guy. So that's the trade-off we have had to make. With that said, there is a latest news section, and I would be a little bit surprised as to why there's a news section in a sort of a dental fitness kind of app, but for the purposes that they have put this over here, it actually makes perfect sense. You have all of these different articles, and it does buy proof of fact from the people around you. It does give a little bit of credit to the mentality of letting their name be backed by latest news, and so I'm not completely against it. I would have maybe put it a little bit over to the bottom, because this just seems a little too quick. When you're having a single link be on a single page, that's fine, but when you have a bunch of different news links all on the first page, then it's really easy to go to these different sites, and then maybe for someone on this background, go to healthtech.com and then just get lost in the world of healthtech.com, completely forget about Halo. So that remains a concern for me completely. But with that said, actually this is the end of the page, so maybe it's not the worst thing in the world. With that said, it does have a super cool newsletter section, just the simplest one, and it has a super cool footer. So you have an awesome animation at the bottom, and that for me does take away many of its negative points. For example, the spacing. So I'm not the biggest fan of the spacing over here. I get that they've tried to provide us with some white space, but you know those times when white space just isn't sort of white spacing, when it just doesn't work, because you have all of these elements sort of in one section, and even if I try to justify that with a little bit of white space in the next section, it still is all stuck in one section, either in this corner, or when you go to the real footer, or you have this text in this one chunk of a corner, which is really horrible to look at and read, and which just really makes your job so much more difficult. So what do you guys think of this site? Let me know. How would you rate this out of 10? I think at this point it's safe to say I'm going to rate it a 3, and I get that this might seem a little bit unfair. 3 out of 10 just seems like the smallest number in the whole world, but considering all of the different flaws that they have, considering absolutely everything that went wrong with it, come on, 3 is a good number for me. It's just what I'm giving. I would want to know what you guys think, but 3 it is for this specific UI. With that said, let's go on to, I believe this has a couple of other pages which I do want to look at, which I didn't notice before. But this might finally bring those numbers up, which I've been keeping at 3, especially for the homepage. This next page is the pricing page, which actually had a cool animation, the train animation at the top when we just got started, and then it has the pricing section as well. A couple of cards. I'm still struggling with the spacing over here. I get white space gets me, and yet this is either an attempt gone wrong or an attempt that was just about to go right but then forgot what right was and took a left turn. This just seems off to me, and the spacing is just not working. The spacing over here and over here is absolutely different, which is abhorrent in design language. There is no certain spacing. This and this are aligned not in the center but at the top, which is also quite weird to do in a complicated card like this. The spacing overall is just putting me off to the point where I'm just done with it. So that's kind of the reason I won't go over 3 for this one. The animations are cool though. We have to say these animations are quite cool, especially when you just get into the screen. There is a lot of, check this out, the map animation setup goes on. This might actually bring the whole numbering up to a 5, because I was not expecting this card map moving animation, and it is quite complicated to make. So 5 out of 10 for Halo Digital. Let's look at a couple of the other pages, because now I'm very, very intrigued. But I have to say, when you're having all of these cool changes, all of these cool effects on your site, check this out. This page, this product page, would have made a much better hero than the one that they had, especially because it was just black and white, and it lacked a lot of color and it lacked a lot of personality, which was kind of what was putting me off, along with the spacing. So I do think you have good features in here, and it just needs that tiny little bit of a polishing, because you have a pricing section and then you have a super cool map that is going on over there. But I would argue, when someone is already decided they're going to go to the pricing, it does not make sense to impress them with the super cool map that was going whoosh 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 on 3 different places. This is the map that I'm talking about. This is at the pricing section, you guys, just putting this into perspective, because I'm going to be thinking about this for over a year now. This is in the pricing section. Who needs these features in the pricing section? Like, I would have been much happier if this was in the landing page. It would just have made so much more sense, and this is why it gets really difficult for me to understand. I think there is a lot of content and there is a lot of tricky animation going on, but the structure and the setup and the whole finer details of the whole thing are just not making sense for me. With that said, we were looking at the product page, which I was quite happy with. Again, this digital mirror is in the font Arial or something that similar, which does set me off. There are things I would want to say against the font. I mean, you could have had any font, serif, sans serif, whatever you did, it could have worked over here and it would have been all fine. Hunky Dory, Outfit, Montserrat, Poppins, like there's 1,000 fonts I can name right off the bat that would have looked better than Arial. Any fonts. And I get that this might not exactly be Arial, but you have to open this font up and then you have to look at Arial, and I can guarantee they're going to be way too similar for me not to say something, for me to just ignore the entire thing. Like the video if you like the video, dislike the video if this whole site is not up to your standards. In fact, like the video in either case. With that said, we are now looking at Halo One Room package. Here's what I don't understand. There were so many cool features with this one. There were so many cool things that you could have done. This is, by the way, looking much cooler than the hero. As I've said before, I'm still going to say there were so many cool things that you could have done, and then you went ahead and messed it all up. By the way, I appreciate this bento grid far more than I ever appreciated the bento grid in the hero section. If you want to see the bento grid of the hero section of the landing page, you might want to sort of rewind the video a little bit. But I'm just saying, every single element that I criticized them for is executed to perfection in the site. The only caveat is it's executed so much later. Like, it is much easier for the user to see your cool features when they're in the landing page as opposed to them being in the pricing page or the products page. So I do think there is a lot of improvement going on as this site was being made, and as the future pages started getting made, the designers, developers started improving on things one after the other. But this is where it gets a little tricky for me to rate, because now you have this site that is kind of janky in the first page, but then it isn't on the other pages, which is not good for user experience, and yet it shows some solid skills. So with that said, check this out. This is a super cool animation. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You have this super cool lightning of your dreams, and then in situ lightning without LED. You have all of these cool features. You had this section, you had this animation, and then you choose to have a stupid video in your hero section along with a really complicated paragraph at the bottom, which I couldn't understand for the life of me, and I can already understand what this is talking about. This is what's blowing my mind. You have all of the elements right here. This animation is the coolest thing I've ever seen, and yet you still have a rotating video going 360 degrees on your landing page. This is the stupidest thing anyone has ever done in web design that I've ever seen. This is just so stupid, and it's so good, but they've just not structured it properly, and it's completely breaking my heart. Like, this is the biggest heartbreak of the day for me. With that said, Again, this font is bothering me. Can we just change this font, please? Enough with this font, because every single time you look at the spacing, you look at the layouts, you look at the images in the background, and you expect something good is going to pop up, but then you are again hit with Arial or a close blooded cousin of Arial. So this is all just too close to Arial for me to not say something. Again, you have these paragraphs, and those paragraphs can work in a page like this, because when people are looking at your product, when people are looking at your pricing, they're already sort of in the mood to commit. But when they're not, when they're on the landing page, an animation like this would have worked perfectly. So I think that's where my true questions and my two problems lie. Check this out, you guys. I just noticed something super duper awesome. When you scroll on this site, this title, this Arial like title, which I am still hating, is getting sticky, and the other elements are automatically scrolling. So this gets sticky on like 40% of the screen, which is a cool effect, which they could have done in the landing page, but they chose not to. It's completely ridiculous to me how they've got all of these awesome features, and then they choose to take them and they choose to dump them out in the product or pricing pages, and then they forget about them, and the landing page looks like the dumbest thing in the book. Like, this is insanity. Either someone did this on purpose, or they didn't do the entire site on purpose. There's just only two reasons to explain what's going on over here. And again, you have the frequently asked questions, you have the cool animations, and this is always going to be the case, because I'm speechless at this point. Animations are going to be animations, and it's going to be great. But when you don't have them at the top, when you're doing boring things at the landing page, things are really going to be really difficult for anyone to digest from that point on. This section in its own has 3 simple features. How to reserve a halo now. This would have been so much better than having your newsletter on the first page, simply because this is much clearer in terms of call to action. And I wouldn't go against having your newsletter. I mean, you can have your newsletter, but having this be in the first 3 sections of your landing page would have been so much better. Reserve a halo now. This is so simple when you want to reserve like those medical halo things. Place your $200 deposit, a sales rep will come contact you, and your halo will be shipped in 2025. This is like the simplest thing you could ever have to understand, and yet they had that huge complicated paragraph for which you'll have to rewind this video back. So this is what's driving me completely insane. You have these good features, and then you choose not to use them, and then you have the same exact footer repeated again and again and again. An FAQ section, which is also really, check this out. This is a complicated menu. I'm just not going to say that this is simple, because it's not. You have this animation going on with the text. You have a complicated menu. This complicated menu, by the way, you guys, newsflash, is also sticky. And then you have this awesome pricing section, and then all of these sticky features, all of the cool pricing and fixing. This is the first section that I've ever seen on the site that has its spacing right, by the way. So you have a section that has its spacing right, that is sticky, having text animations, having color hover animations, and then you choose to throw it all away, and the landing page looks out super duper boring. So that's just what's completely breaking my heart at this point. You can contact them, it's just listed right here. You can contact them through their page, and you can tell them about all of the details, and this is still continuing to be sticky. Why am I the only one? Either I'm just noticing things too slow at this point, or and this is the more likely scenario, things are just far more sticky on the other pages, which is a good thing. But the landing page turns out a little bland, because there isn't a lot of stuff that's actually sticky to the page, that's actually taking up its space, at least, if not for the entire page, at least for the entirety of that section. So that's just really what's getting my goat now. The next section that we want to talk about was the company section. So I believe this is the final section. And check this out. This is even better than anything we ever thought, because you have an image, and then you have a bento-like image, and it leaves a little bit of spacing, and it also has this huge title, which would have been much better if you had chosen any other font. You have this cool bento grid, and I'm still going to point out, in just about all of the pages that they've shown us after the home page, like, there have been 3 good bento grids which have all of their spacing right and their centering right, and the landing page bento grid did not have that going for it, which is what's blowing my mind. If you can make a good bento grid, why would you not? Why would you not put it in your landing page? Why would you let your landing page be your first experiment, and absolutely everything else be better than it, and you have to wait for someone else to sort of find things out? I do think after we're done with this entire site, check this out, they've finally introduced a dash of color, which I get comes from these images, but color is refreshing to see, especially in this section. Like, if it was any other section, they would have made these images black and white. And it is just blowing my mind how better the company section is to all of the other sections. And yet, check this out. This is a slider which takes a couple of cards and send them to the back with 0% opacity and brings back that opacity when you're still scrolling these things again. This is the coolest sections I've ever seen in terms of the testimonials, and yet they couldn't get the font right. They couldn't get these kind of 3 cards vanishing to the background effect happening when it was just all starting. So this is all really weird for me to understand still. As I said, the news section is still there. The same exact news section is also present over here, but they could have just put other things, for example this card, and then used a new section at the landing page, and that would have made a lot more sense, because it has some cool animations. It has these 3 cards sort of disappearing in the background, which is something that you kind of want to see on a landing page. Like, you kind of do. These are simple news pages, and that's all they're ever going to be. If you get my point, you get my point. Again, you have your newsletter, and you have your footer, which are all really common sections. But that is it for our Halo Dental landing page. You can also change the size language to French, and you can change it back to a dark or light mode, which, by the way, it looks much better in dark mode, I'm going to be honest over here. With that said, this has been Halo Dental. Overall, this is going to be a 5 out of 10 for a site for me, because everything that I said they did wrong, they eventually sort of fixed it in the other pages, and yet they don't know how to structure the pages so that the good sections come out at the top on the landing page, which is what I'm going to look at, is called We Go Again. What is going on with my screen? I have to open it up and open it up again. Alright, the next site that we're looking at is called We Go Again, and I want to see what goes on again, because I'm still not sure. Is this site not loading, or is my internet the slowest thing in the world? I believe we will find out. That was awesome. Did you see that super cool animation that just came in as soon as we opened up the page? That was awesome. And as soon as you scroll over to another section, now you get this super cool animation where the image becomes smaller, goes back, comes back on your face like a pop-up effect, but kind of slowed down. And then you also have this super cool effect in terms of scrolling off the page. Check this out. This is super duper awesome. You can also choose a section if you want to. This is a creative production studio founded by a former Olympian and award-winning director. We know sport. This is fun stuff. This is absolutely incredible. You can also filter into documentaries and commercials, which is kind of awesome. You can also have a couple of other pages, for example the work page. I love the way they've done this. So when you scroll to the bottom, one of these sections scrolls to the bottom, the one that you're scrolling. All of the other sections go in the opposite direction, which is actually kind of beautiful to look at. With that said, this is actually a really nice site. It's small, it's simple, it's sharp, and it has this really cool coming up effect for the text. It's actually incredible to look at. And with that said, from a completely site-based point of view, I would give it a 7 out of 10, simply because it's doing so many different cool effects. I do think the length of the site is something that it does lack in. There could have been a little bit more complexity. There could have been a little bit more content. I am missing a couple of fonts. Like, I do think this is a good font, but you could have done something better with it, if that makes any sense at all. So I'm not saying this isn't good. It has a lot of really cool effects, but its entire area is just really small, and you could have gotten through this in like 3 different seconds. So this is a small site. It has some cool effects, has some cool features, but there's definitely so much more room to improve. With that said, we're going to now look at the third site, Norman Dubois' portfolio. So what's gonna happen? Who knows? I think this is going to be my favorite site, because check this out. As soon as you get inside, you have this super cool text emerging effect going on, and then you also have a super cool flashlight at the bottom, which has been made by hijacking our cursor. You can scroll, and this is going to give you all of the different words, and then as soon as you hover over them, the cool line goes on from the background, just covering the entire length, making a offset underline, if that makes sense. You can click on one of these, and it's going to open up another project for you. Check it out. This is an awesome project. And then the text comes back in the same exact way that it did I am going to say that it's kind of awesome that they've kept a little bit of white spacing. This could have been brought down by a little bit and it would have made the spacing even more elegant, but I'm just going to ignore that flaw because at the end of the day it looks good. It kind of does. And then you also have about the project. Big fan of the red circle, by the way. Looks kind of nice. It has a little bit of spacing. It makes things all nice and easy. It has this image that just takes up the amount of space that it needs to. A more info section. The line just takes up the entire space that it needs to. An animation going on. And as soon as you start completing the page, you get how much percentage of the page is left. Overall, a very cool vibe. Incredible aesthetic. Something that I'm a huge fan of. So, check it out. As soon as we scroll to the bottom, the image sort of grew to take up the entire space that it was taking up. And then you also have this other section inside of this landing page that's sort of animating, that talks about what the person you are. This is the type addict section. And then you have the husky dad section, which, by the way, I'm going to sort of watch out for. So this just has this cool image effect along with all of the different things that this person does. Creative director at Doff Jungs, and then gym lover, and then husky dad, and then I'm still stuck on the husky dad because I loved the husky more than I loved Norman, which is going to let this scroll on its own speed. Check this out. My new project, Audi. And I do think the way they've introduced things, the way the text sort of comes up in its own animation is kind of incredible to look at. It's a lot of fun. I do want to see sort of what would happen if we clicked on any of these. It's still taking a lot of time to load, which is honestly the bad side of sites that are super duper fancy. You can't really rely on them to be visible at all. The speeds are kind of horrible and I don't really want to leave you waiting, but at the end of the day, I have to say the way they've implemented everything, overall this site is a solid 8 out of 10 for me, because it's kind of refreshing. You can see what's going on. The reason I held back the 2 points was honestly the speed. If you can't make it work on all sides, it's just going to be one of those really weird fancy paintings that not a lot of people look at. This is exactly why I've given it an 8. Check it out. It takes a lot of space, gets really comfortable, looks really nice. More about me personally, and I am a little bit of a skeptic regarding these huge chunks of text. I do think even if the people want to know more about you, keep reading is not going to be the phrase that keeps them reading, especially if they're on paragraph 2 of paragraph 7. And so it just makes sense to have a couple of images or a couple of text icons, something in the middle, especially when you hover over one of these nav elements and you have an image hover. I know for sure you have the ability to make things hover on text, and you have that designer of a skill, and then you could have done that in any of these texts, maybe added an image or two. This is the most boring thing ever. The ability to bore me, and the speed are honestly the only 2 reasons I could ever give this site an 8. This is a scroll bar which kind of scrolls up and down, and the number sort of goes up and down. So when I go up to the scroll, it becomes a 0, and then when you go down, it becomes a 15. All of these are the cool awards that they've won, which I'm honestly a little bit jealous of. Like this is kind of top-notch stuff, the best in class. And when you hover over one of these, you see what I'm talking about. You see all of these images. It would have been nice to see something related, something relevant, especially when you have a husky licking peanut butter in the section of a gym addict. So I do think you could have done a little bit of a better job with this text. But even if you didn't, this is still a very solid 8 out of 10. Let me know what you guys think of this site, because I'm kind of a fan. With that said, let's go on to the next one. The next site that we're talking about is Pterodactyl XYZ. I do believe this is the site that the thumbnail of the site, the thumbnail of this video came from. So we're going to have a little bit of a reminiscing effect. The bad side of it is you can't really rely on these sites to load in the speed that you want them to load to, which is honestly a shame. But check this out. Welcome to Pterodactyl. Love the use of the A concatenated with the C. Very bespoke, and they're claiming to be a bespoke and boutique QA agency, which is impeccable. You have a logo over here, you have your kind of logo image over here, you have your standard menu bar. It might have been better if you'd made this a little bit darker, because I'm kind of trying to search for the menu bar in my head right now, and yet it's kind of difficult to see. You have an FAQ section, and the only thing that you can see is the Let's Fly section. Maybe it would have been better to align it perfectly with the FAQ section, but even if you haven't, I'm going to give you a pass on that. You can open up this menu, and it takes up the entire screen. Did you see that? That was like the coolest thing in the whole world. And when you hover over one of these, it just takes up its entire space, and it only highlights the kind of blobs of color that it needs to, the blurry blobs of color, which I'm honestly such a big fan of. And this is so awesome, you guys. This is one of the projects that they've done, SpongeBob's Crazy Carnival, and the colors revert when you hover over it with the hijacked cursor. I do want to see what happens in SpongeBob's Crazy Carnival. I'm just a cartoon head when it comes to those things. It scrolls horizontally. Did you see that? I am physically scrolling this thing vertically and it's going horizontally. So that's just the state of things. That's exactly what's happening with me right now, and I'm in love with the way this works. The one thing that I'll have as feedback is, and I give this feedback so many times, especially when you're reviewing sites of this category, there is no peace of mind when reading this text. Like, you could have had a certain image, you could have had an icon, you could have had a text break, and yet you have these huge ginormous chunks of text. And I'm going to say this as a person who is very invested in design. What is the point of designing and animating all of these awesome websites when your text is a huge bum in the center, and no one is going to bother with your site as soon as they get irritated by what's in the content? So people are going to like your site, like the design, subconsciously go to the content, and the content is going to be too much or too boring, and people are just going to leave. Normally says hello, welcome back normally, but I do have to say this is like the most irritating thing ever. And let me know what you guys think of this site out of 10, because I'm yet to rate it and I have huge feelings for it. What do you guys think this should be out of a 10? Welcome back, old viewers. I love you so much. Thank you so much for coming back. With that said, this is on the one hand, this is going on a horizontal scroll. On the other hand, this is like the hugest chunk of text ever, and I would not read it even if I like to read stuff, because come on, sites are not built for reading. Sites are made so you can make them easier for people to look at. Like, don't quote me on this, but you get why I would be afraid of putting a huge chunk of text if it puts people off. Because if people are running away from your site, what is the point of having put hours of your life into great design? It's just not making a lot of sense right now. I am looking at viewers' projects as well, and we're going to combine them for a future video. So for those of you who want to have your sites reviewed, maybe leave them in our Discord group or in one of these comments. Either of those things work. We are working on it, do not worry. These are the links which you can sort of go outside of the site from, and I don't think this is going to be their site anymore, and I want to stay away from it. But with that said, we have gotten a kind of a gist on how this site is, the way it's working, and at the end of the day, it's not the coolest thing in the whole world, but we're looking at what happens when you click on Let's Fly. So this is like the first section ever, and then you have this whole super cool text effect. So as soon as you start scrolling, all of these sections start taking up their own space. It's like a 45-degree angle tilt, which takes up black color only when you're scrolling past it, which is kind of awesome to look at. But with that said, check it out. All of these are just the same generic sections. I am missing images, you guys, because you can't put a 3D model at the top, put a little bit of a gradient, and forget all about the images. I feel like the only true issue here is, and I'm combining all of the issues that I've blabbed about, you don't have an enough amount of images, and your spacing gets lost when text comes in. So this feels like a desperate attempt by a designer who just came in, used gradients, and used all of these super cool 3D models at the very first landing page, and then forgot all about it, and then was bombarded by a bunch of text. And then when the bunch of text came in, they just got completely confused, and then they just started putting text left and right, forgetting about spacing and images. And I don't think you can forget about spacing, by the way. So I think spacing is something we're struggling with. There's no spacing over here, and there's a lot of spacing over here. Shadows work, gradients work, animations are on point, never going to lie about that. But with that said, check it out. There is a 3D model, and it also scrolls horizontally as you hover on this text. So check this out. The 3D model animation happened, it blew apart. All of these things are always happening, and yet you don't have images, and there is going to be a need of images and illustrations to be on your site. Check this out. There is an image, but it's of the author, and it would have been nice, author, if you would let us see the images that were required in the site, because it becomes difficult for us to understand. There is a little bit of a text split scroll effect going in the background. You can choose to get to know them better, which I might do, but it's on the same format. Like, it's scrolling horizontally, same 45-degree black angle coming in. The green, red, and blue is the stark color theme that they've chosen. It's a brutalist color scheme, don't get me wrong. It's not conventional colors that would work together in like no other color really plain green, black, red, green, blue, red sense, but it does work, and I wouldn't have had a problem if the text wasn't this dense and the spacing wasn't this completely random. So with that said, pterodactyl, let me know what you think of this site from out of a 10. I think this deserves to be at a 6 because the spacing and the images are off by that much. Yes, they absolutely are. What do you guys think the number should be? I'm just going to wait for you guys now. Alright, so I'm just going to wait for 1 second to see what you guys say about the rating. Just type this out in the comments if you're watching this video later. Come on, do it. The next site that we're talking about is called Cub. Alright, this is Cub cph.tv. Let's see what happens. 0%, 200%, loading happens super duper quickly. Text comes up in a super cool format, and then you have this semi-cut text, which I do think is a mistake, you guys. They wanted to have the whole shift up animation go on, and then forgot to put a little bit of a padding over here and something cut it off, which is why this is looking super duper weird. So the E over the top kind of got cut out, and everything over here is getting cut out. What happens when you click on one of these? I do want to see. Oh, it's playing a video. I'm going to need to have to stop the volume. So it does play a video, and it's just super duper slow. This is the negative thing with all of these nice sites. They are so slow, you want to kill yourself in the process, and it's just going to take a lot of time, and it's the most annoying thing in the whole world. Alright, so you have a video of this guy. You can make the video full screen. I don't want to play the entire video because we're on stream, but let's just go to another section because this is already so boring for me. I've read a couple of words and this is kind of boring. But now you have a kind of interesting section, all work. Let's see what happens. Why are these images not optimized for the web? Why is everything so insanely slow? I am going to hurt myself now. This is super annoying. Whatever you call it, whatever you might, this is like the most annoying thing I've ever seen. Like, why are these images not loading? And when they are in the process of loading, why do we not have placeholders? Like this is kind of black and kind of blue, but let's just take a look at one of these. So we chose this one, and it had its image and it had its videos. What are Curb TV actually about? Because now I'm just wondering, because there wasn't a lot of clear explanation. So they are basically giving us these examples. Your trusted creative partner, and as I said before, this text is getting cut off at the top. Sue me if you will. It's happening. It's a web design thing. It's actually a bit of an error because no one wants to cut it off, especially because there was an accent over the E in Forte, and then they sort of cut it off by their own. So that wasn't on purpose. Again, I'm going to have a problem that I did with a previous site. I think the problem was with Vigo again. No, it was with some other site. I think it was with Halo. This font is like a simple brother to Roboto, which is the next most common font after Arial and also Comic Sans. So I am a little bit sad on the fact that they didn't use any good font, especially when you have the spacing right, especially when it's taking up a lot of space. Minor errors is what kills this entire site. So this font isn't very, very complicated, even though this is Instrument Serif, you guys, which is a nice font. And then this is Roboto, which isn't good, especially if you're doing an all caps version. And then this font, for as nice as it may be, got cut off at the top, which was the most devastating news to us ever. You have these auto-playing videos, which I'm kind of skeptical about, but if it serves your purpose, it serves your purpose. This font size is too small, and yes, I'm being too critical at this point, but this font size is simply too small. We advise our clients to think of their content not just as individual productions, but as part of a growing content strategy. While the term sounds a bit abstract, it's not a secret sauce. I think this could have been much, much simpler. Like, to the makers of this site, go to chatgpt.com, ask them to casual and simplify it, and it would have given you something much, much better. Like, this is the most irritating thing in the whole wide world. And then you also have this numbering going on. For a second in the number 1, I thought this was like a weird line that also got cut off but kind of overflowed. So I think number 1, number 2 isn't entirely clear, but I think we could also get used to it. So again, the whole fact that this gets cut off makes a lot of things that I believe in difficult to believe in, because now you have this number and you're not entirely sure if this is a number or if it's a cut-off line. Like, you get my struggle over here, right? And then you have this text that's going in a marquee tag over and over again in one single direction. Meet the team. Sue me for this, but this specific section is much better than the hero section of the landing page. Like, that's just the truth at this point. what's going on with you. Get yourself in line, get this fixed, because this is a great site, and this again shows that the designer can work, that the developer can work, and yet the homepage is the one that's often looking the worst, especially because it was just so neglected the entire time we were working. Like, this is a super cool phenomenon to look at in design. When you have all of the other pages other than the hero section look worse than the hero section, it's probably because the creator thought that the landing page was the most important page, started with it, and then used all of their skills, improved their skills on the entire site, and never went back. I think an easier way to solve this problem would be to start from the second most important page, not landing page. Landing page is the first most important page. Start with the second most important page, then go to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, and then come back to the landing page, which is the most important page. So you're kind of now having a lot of skill, and then it works out, and you get the best page performance on landing page 10, if that makes any sense at all. That's the strategy I've been using recently, and it works so well, you guys. Check this out. This is like one of the best footers I've ever seen. There is a huge curb footer, the word curb over here, and then you also have a description. I am a little bit skeptical with the spacing. Why is there an unequal amount of space here and here? And even if there is, why is it visually that this spacing and this spacing does not look equal? I get the fact that there's optical illusion in design, but this spacing and this spacing, it's just not working, you guys. Even this one and this one, I'm not happy with it. This is a footer. It's kind of plain and simple. I do think that this line is also cutting off this image. I don't know if it's on purpose or if it's not. I do think it isn't on purpose. So the fact that this line is cutting this image is also quite difficult for me to understand. This site had such a lot of potential, and I am so sad to say that this site is like a 5 out of 10 for me, even though they used a lot of cool tricks, even though they were using a lot of really cool things, especially because it was kind of difficult for me to understand what was happening. Check this out. The contact page, the last page, which I just said right now through that principle, is the most interesting page. Like, if they'd just done the landing page after this page and started with the second most important page, the site would have been so much better, because everything that comes after the consecutive of the pages is looking much better than the last one. About section was worse than services. Contact is better than about. So if you had done the landing page after the contact section by starting from the second most important section and working your way through the last section and then going back to the landing page, things would have been much better, if you get what I mean. So this is looking super duper incredible, but it's the contact me page, and I think the whole structuring is off once again, which is why I'm going to rate the site a 5 out of 10. Let me know what you think. I am so happy to read your comments. The last site of today that we're going to talk about, again, super duper fun stuff, Webisoft R. Let's see what's going on with Webisoft R. Right off the bat, this feels like a piece of modern art, which I'm not saying is a compliment. Sometimes you get modern art, sometimes you understand it's pretty, and yet sometimes you walk into a studio, look at modern art and think, my 5-year-old could have drawn better than that. My 5-year-old niece would do such a good job at making this piece of weird junk that they call modern art at this point, and I feel like Webisoft R has somehow managed to do that. Not entirely sure how. I would want to compliment them, and yet it's just not working out for me. Like, this thing is animated, which is quite cool, honestly, but the whole piece of text and everything, there is not a lot of white spacing. Some of you might argue, Veera, there is white spacing. There's white spacing at the top. I think though, there needed to be a little bit of white spacing over here, but the chat icon took it away, and then you sort of have to opt out of it, and still this icon doesn't go away anywhere. So I think you could have had the let's talk over here and then the chat icon appear from the next screen, which made a lot more sense. But this section coupled with this section, this looks a little bit cluttered. Like, this shape is uneven, which was fine for aesthetic purposes, but this whole thing, it looks a little bit weird and a little bit uneven, to be honest. So I don't think this is my favorite section ever. You can see where things are placed as they are, but I'm just not going to justify it a lot, because I don't want you guys to understand or take lessons from it and then implement it in the future, because this isn't a good hero section to me. By comparison, this looks like a much better hero section, where you have the logo, you have the menu, and then you also have this nice background 3D effect going on, and then you also have this text. I did say for Pterodactyl, which was the fourth site of today, that 3D effects were really the bane of existence for Pterodactyl, and I feel like Webisoft might be much worse off, because not only do they have 3D effects to rely on completely, but also they're only starting off with the 3D effects on the second section and not the first section, unlike Pterodactyl, which already did. So I do think this is going to be a little bit difficult for me to take in. As you start scrolling, this W sort of converts, gets made a little bit smaller and gets a little bit weirder as well. again, I'm not really happy with the spacing. What's going on? Is this at the top? Is this at the top? Is this at the top? Do I click on one of these things? This is the most confusing site in the whole world. I can't understand a single thing. Spacing here is off, spacing here is off, spacing here is off. I get that there's spacing, but it's off because I can't, from my eyes of a designer, see how this makes sense. Look at this. The spacing is just off over here and here. There isn't a lot of stuff that's making sense. You have a text, you have a description, you have a number for some reason. I still don't know why there is a different numbering going on that says S/001, and then you have this thing revolving. This is much worse than pterodactyl for that matter. Like, this is a solid 3 out of 10 for me, because I don't know what these spacings are going. I can see that you put a lot of effort into it. I can see that there's a lot of stuff going on, but I just don't get what's going on. Like, this is having a pattern simply because it's repeating the same pattern all over again, but this isn't a good pattern to follow. Even if you make 1,000 more replicates of it, it's just not a good pattern to follow, if that makes sense. They've hijacked our cursor and they've allowed us to drag it, which I'm kind of a fan of, and you can kind of work with these cards, but the spacing here is the offset and the spacing over here. I don't think I'll ever get really happy with the way it is. It's just a thing of mine. It's kind of an ick, and I do think it's an ick of the users as well, because you don't really know whether this is going to stick, whether it's going to like take up the space of important navigation elements, which by the way are also related on this exact same place. And so this is just a really difficult thing for me. It could have been easier if instead of having a lot of spacing, you would like had a simple bit of a circle and then a logo and then maybe some text or some image in it. Like I would have wanted to see a little bit of a relief. No one right off the bat wants to read this huge chunk of text. No one does, and I'm just speaking this from experience. No one ever does. The background is incredible in terms of the white spacing. Like, they've allowed a lot of stark contrast in terms of the white and black to exist, which I'm a fan of. And I was talking right a couple of minutes ago about this spacing and the fact that you needed to have a little bit of a space over here, a little bit of an icon or something, some image, and they managed to do it. So they managed to do it in the next section. We drive your systems forward. Like, you could have had this arrow be over here and it would have made something more easier. You could have had it in the workload or commitment or something that really required attention, but instead they did it in the second section, which I arguably could say needed it lesser than the section that was tasked with all of this different text. And then you have this sort of weirdly placed over here. I get that you try to do a little bit of an offset vibe everywhere, but it did not work. Instead it just looks random and it just completely looks out of place. Calculations for spacing are so wrong, to the point where I don't even want to see these next pages, you guys. Let's see an AI page, because I don't want to compliment the footer, because it's not compliment worthy. Check it out. It's again doing this weird numbering thing, which I as a newbie don't understand at all, which is bad from the site's perspective. Navigation bar animation is kind of on point, and the artificial intelligence page is also a simple permutation combination of the same exact thing. Normally says love the background, thank you so much, made it myself, I'm really proud of it, we're kind of improving on it, we're in the process. But with that said, we drive your systems forward. Isn't that what they said for the last section as well? Isn't this the exact same footer we had? I think it is. When you have these huge chunks of text, you can experiment around with text, you can work with things, you can implement them again and again, you can make things more memorable with more than one tagline, which is also something that brands do, but they chose not to do it. We drive your systems forward. And what systems? Like, this is all really difficult to look at and understand. You can change the language, which is great. You have a little bit of a social media, which is great. Canada, United States office, you can chat with them, which is great. But overall, I am going to rate this site appallingly a 2 out of 10, which I know is going to shock a lot of people, but I couldn't for the life of me see structure in this site, and that's what's just leaving me disappointed today, you guys. With that said, we looked at 6 different awesome websites today. I am so happy you guys are joining me live today to just look at all of these sites, look at all of the miracles the internet of 2025 has led us to be. I'm live here every single day at 9 p.m. Indian Standard 3:30 p.m. GMT. I hope I'm audible. I hope you like this stream, because I kind of worked really hard on it. I will see you again tomorrow. Until then, keep designing, keep having fun, and don't forget to tune in live here today at 9 p.m. IST